There have been too many horror movies to count centering on exorcisms, possessions, and nuns through the years. I've covered most of them released over the last decade plus, and there are two things similar with pretty much all of them. Every one of the trailers or poster blurbs tout the newest one as the best religious horror film since The Exorcist. And two, they all fail to live up to that hype. Even without the hype, those films are still bad movies, pretty much just copying what The Exorcist did way back when. But it makes me especially angry that these films are so deluded and convinced that their viewers are so stupid to believe that hype. Now, I think the First Omen's ads said the same thing, something like the most horrifying movie of the year. And while this one is not as effective as The Exorcist, it still is effectively horrifying in its own right. So let's check out the First Omen together. Before we get to the innards of this video, I just wanted to let my devoted followers know that I wrote another film and it'll be out this Friday, April 19th, on Tubi as a Tubi original. I haven't seen this one. I have no idea how faithful the final film will be to my script, but I did write it. It's my second feature film to be made and the first stab at a disaster movie, and I called it Earthquake Underground. Now you may say, Mark, all earthquakes are underground, but the name refers to a handful of survivors of a massive earthquake trapped in a building who find themselves underground and desperate to find their way to the surface. I had a blast writing this with the good people at the asylum. If you have a spare hour and a half and want to check out a fun disaster movie, Earthquake Underground is free on Tubi this Friday, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find something to like about it. The First Omen is now in theaters from 20th Century Fox. It's directed by Arkasha Stevenson and written by Tim Smith, Arkasha Stevenson, and Keith Thomas. Servants Nell Tiger Free plays Margaret, a nun in training brought from Massachusetts to Rome to receive her final lessons to achieve her veil. After she becomes situated in her new home and new duties at the orphanage, we find out that Margaret herself is from an orphanage, and though she has had a history of behavioral issues as a child, she's always planned on becoming a nun. Meanwhile, Margaret becomes attached to a young girl named Beatrice, played by Mia McGovern-Zayani, who reminds her of her troubled youth. But the stronger Margaret and Beatrice's connection goes, the closer Margaret seems to uncover a deep, dark conspiracy meant to bring forth the birth of the Antichrist. I was never in love with the Omen movies. I preferred the much more sublime and nightmarish extremes of The Exorcist, and when the series went on, following Damien, the Antichrist child, as he grew through adolescence, I still preferred less elevated schlockers like Fear No Evil and Evil Speak, which felt more grungy and fun to me than the drama-heavy series, which seems to have more of an elevated horror feel long before the term was coined. So I was somewhat ambivalent when I heard there would be a new Omen movie, this time a prequel, coming to theaters spring 2024. At least it couldn't be as tame as the Julia Stiles remake we got a few years ago. So color me surprised when I started hearing good things about The First Omen, and though I was busy the last few weeks and missed the premieres of both Immaculate and The First Omen, I was happy to know that at least The First Omen was out in theaters still, so I got to check it out to see what all the hubbub was all about. The first thing I noticed about The First Omen was how it looked. Set in Rome in 1971, the film really captures the look and feel of a lot of those old giallo films I know and love. Not only does the film clothe the cast and extras in era-appropriate wares, but the streets are lined with boxy cars zipping around, and there's a wonderful attention paid to the Gothic architecture that lines every street. On top of that, there's a gritty, grainy look to the film stock that makes it feel like it was made in the 70s. I'm not talking about the grindhouse lens design that occurs in low-budget films that try to make it all look like old film stock. There's just a layered, aged grittiness to the lens here, making all the whites feel yellowed and withered, and really capturing the stony, weathered feel to every location this film goes to. You have to admit, no matter what religion you're talking about, when looked at objectively, any religion is odd with all of its rituals, dramatics, and blindly faithful followers. While I feel most religious horror fails because it attempts to make nuns, religions, and rituals odd from a distant surface level, The First Omen gets up close and personal, which I believe is the real key to why this movie is so effectively shudder-inducing. Director Arkasha Stevenson, who has only done an episode or two of highly effective horror series like Brand New Cherry Flavor, Legion, and Channel Zero, impressed me with the way the filmmaker zooms in uncomfortably close and maximizes all of the senses in order to make this an extremely disconcerting watch all the way through. That might sound like a negative critique, but that's the way I like my horror, disconcerting. Stevenson not only captures extremely disturbing imagery, but she zooms in so close that you can almost smell it. In other cases, reminiscent of films like Jacob's Ladder, she gives you obscured views that makes you crane your neck to see, but also dread what it is you're about to see. There is scene after scene like this, proving the old adage that less is more, and the less seen in horror, the more the mind fills in the blanks with stuff you could never come up with on the screen itself. Adding to the visual assault is the fantastic soundtrack comprised of moaning choirs, organ music, and classic Italian rhythms you'd find in any old giallo, as well as an epic score, again with the disturbing scenes, and there are a lot of them. The sound effects are just as distinctive and disturbing. In one specific scene, a demon tongue slurps as it smears against Margaret's cheek. Not only is this image and the actress's reaction horrifying, but the sound of the slurp throws you into the scene and amps the terror to an almost unbearable level. Scenes like that occur often in The First Omen, and they're all amazing. The lead, Nell Tiger Free, plays a character similar to her breakout role in Servant, but maybe that's just the actress, who has this sort of pure and naive way of carrying herself. Still, because of the extreme things going on, I quickly forgot that Apple series, which sort of devolved into confusion by the end, and was enwrapped in this character. There's a particular scene where Margaret's roommate dresses her in a revealing outfit and she continues to tug at her blouse that really shows that the actress put a lot of depth into her character. The film follows her throughout the night as her inhibitions slowly drop away and Free makes every step believable. The rest of the cast is top tier. You've got major talents here like Sonia Braga, Ralph Ineson, Charles Dance, and Bill Nighy. These are actors with weight and power, filling out the cast, and all of them giving their all. Now, The First Omen isn't perfect. Its derivative is all get out. If you've seen Possession, Jacob's Ladder, and of course the original Omen series, you'll notice entire scenes, especially one towards the very end, are complete lifts from those earlier, more effective movies. While one key Omen scene is repeated, and of course made more extreme with fire for modern audiences, the film doesn't do a lot of homage to the original series. It still exists within that universe and plants that point home at the end, but The First Omen does an impressive job of standing on its own. For a prequel movie I had zero expectations of and no excitement to go see, The First Omen was surprisingly good. While it attempts to throw out twists and turns, it's pretty obvious from the get-go how the whole thing is going to play out. But despite the predictability of the story, it manages to pepper in one shocking scene after another. If other films would treat the source material as well as The First Omen does, the horror genre would be a much better place. As is, enjoy The First Omen, as it feels like that odd instance where I like the modern prequel much more than the original material. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your